I think we're trying to make the case here today that there's a very easy way for us to climb down from this fiscal cliff, because the Senate already passed a bill that would extend tax cuts to 98% of the American people, and the House will not take it up. This will mean over 10 years about $1 trillion in savings. And it won't hurt the millionaires and billionaires. They've told us that over and over again. So here's when the Senate passed the middle-class tax cuts, Madam President. July 25th, 2012. The Republicans have been sitting on it over in the House. They didn't do anything in July, August, September, October, November, and December. Here we are 6 months later, and they refuse to allow a vote on this for reasons that go to their internal disputes. It is time for them to put country over party. It is time for them to put country over their ideological battles. That was a mouthful. I'm going to try it again. It is time for them to put country over their ideological battles. It is time for them to make a decision that favors the American people. Now, I served in the House for 10 proud years, Madam President. It was wonderful, fascinating, interesting. And I served there when Tip O'Neill was the Speaker of the House. And Tip O'Neill understood the magic of 218. What do I mean by that? The magic of 218 was finding 218 votes to get something done. And Tip didn't care if he got it from a liberal, from a conservative, from a moderate, from an independent, from a wacko, it didn't matter. He didn't care who you were, what you were, if he thought you were great or bright or not. He had to put together 218 for the good of the country. And he did it when Ronald Reagan was president. He did it when there was a president who had different views from his own. And they worked together for the good of the country. And I look over at the House and I don't know what I see. There's a few brave voices there speaking out and saying, let's do this thing. Let's extend the middle-class tax cuts. But let me tell you, we have 27 days left to do this before people start facing higher taxes. On average, $2,200 a family. And that's a lot of money for a middle-class family. Now, I want to just be completely honest here and bring up an issue, which is that I never voted for the Bush-era tax cuts. I was one of the few, a minority, because I worried that it would destroy our fiscal responsibility. And I hate to say it now, I was right. I was right. There were surpluses that Bill Clinton left us, but because George W. Bush went in front of the microphone, he said, I have political capital and I'm going to cut everybody's taxes. He then put 2 wars on the credit card, and that was the end of the surpluses. We went into deficits as far as the eye could see, deeper and deeper in debt. So you might ask then, Senator Boxer, why are you now supporting those tax cuts being renewed for 98% of the people? And the answer is, it's a different time and a different place. We're getting out of a recession, and we can make up the monies we need to balance this budget by going just to the top rate, going to the people over $250,000. Remember, this plan that we passed in July, we'll go back to that chart, that gives a tax break on the first $250,000 of income. And in essence, giving everybody a tax break on that first $250,000. It's only after that that the taxes go back to Clinton era. And because this is a different time and place, I support giving a tax break, continuing it for 98%, but asking the wealthiest to pay their fair share for the greatest country on the face of this earth. My father was born into dire poverty. He was the only one of 9 children born in America. He was the only one of 9 children to go to college at night in your great state, Madam President. City college at night, while he supported a family by day. He became a CPA, and after he got his bachelor's, he went at night to a place called Brooklyn Law School, where he got his law degree in 5 years. I was about 10. This is America. He was able to do that. And when he was a CPA, he would oversee everybody's taxes in the family, and I was a kid, and I got my first job working for a long time. I was a telephone operator for Hilton Hotels one summer. I'll never forget it. I was not good at it. I kept putting those wires into the wrong places, but I managed to get through. And when I got my first paycheck, I went to my dad, because I was earning minimum wage. I think it was 75 cents an hour. So I don't know. I know I'm dating myself here, but it's okay. And I said, Dad, why is it I have to pay a whole bunch of money somewhere else to the government? And he said, well, when we earn money, we pay taxes, and if at the end of the year we pay too much, we get a refund. But he said, honey, I want to tell you something. You are so fortunate and blessed to be a citizen of the United States of America. And he said, I know people will laugh at you when you say this, but he said, people who live here and who work here and have the privilege of that freedom and the privilege to grab the dream, they should kiss the ground of this country every time they pay taxes. Now, I once said that on the campaign trail, and I got booed. He said, she's telling us to kiss the ground of America when we pay tax. That was how my father felt. Now, clearly, he also believed in a progressive tax system. He was a smart man, and he believed that those at the bottom end shouldn't pay anything at all, and as you go up, you pay a little more. And that's what President Obama ran on. We had a huge election for the Senate, where the Democrats picked up seats, for the presidency, where a race that was supposed to be Governor Romney's, according to his people, was President Obama's, mainly because President Obama stood up for the middle class and said, when it comes to taxes, we all have to pay our fair share. No more, no less. So when you tell your friends that the president wants to give you your tax cut, you should tell them also it's being held up by the Republicans in Congress, who are sitting on a bill that passed July 25th, 2012. 98% of the American people will get their tax break continued. And only income over $250,000 will be taxed at the same rates when Bill Clinton was president. Let's take a look back at those days. Were they harsh for people? No. We had more millionaires created, I remember, in those days than we had in generations. You know why? Because when the middle class is strong, and he invested in the middle class, he invested in our people. They get good jobs, they pay enough taxes, they go to the mall, they take a trip across the country to see all the great landmarks, and people across this country who have businesses do well. That's why we see so many business people, including small business people, standing at President Obama's side saying, it's good for business to give the middle class their tax breaks. What are these Republicans thinking over there? If I told you, if we're having an argument, that I'll give you 98% of what you want, and you walk away from me, I say you're unreasonable. Who gets 98% of what they want? No one in an argument. We usually meet each other halfway, 50-50. We are giving the Republicans 98% of what they want on the tax cuts, but they are holding the 98% hostage for their friends, the Koch brothers, Sheldon Adelson, the billionaires. You know, that's wrong. And we had an election about it. This is a country of, by, and for the people, not of, by, and for the billionaires. And I'm going to say to my Republican friends, and they are my friends, I've served with them for a long time, I work with them. What are you thinking? What are you doing? Let me tell you one of the things they offered in their package. This is outrageous. They want to raise the age of Medicare by 2 years. I cannot tell you, Madam President, how many people come up to me and shock me when I heard it. I am praying for my 65th birthday so I can get on Medicare because I have no insurance. There's a huge number of people uninsured between the ages of 55 and 65. So this is the Christmas present. This is the happy holiday gift from Speaker Boehner. He is not only in his package, his tax package, giving the tax break to the wealthiest, he's even cutting their taxes further, but paying for it by raising the Medicare age. Now, what does that do? It will surprise you just how bad it is. When you raise the age of Medicare from 65 to 67, ipso facto, 300,000 senior citizens would go uninsured. Merry Christmas to all. It would increase the cost to businesses by $4.5 billion because they have to keep people on their plans. Merry Christmas to you too, business people. It will increase the out-of-pocket costs for those between 65 and 66 by $3.7 billion. It would increase costs to the states by $700 million, and millions would pay an average of $2,200 more for their health care. I will use every tool at my disposal to prevent the destruction of Medicare. What kind of counterproposal is that? It takes your breath away, the pain that would be felt if this went through. And you know, Madam President, I can't help remember, and I'm sure you remember too, the attack that Paul Ryan, who was their nominee for vice president as chairman of their budget committee, the attack he leveled at President Obama for, quote unquote, cutting $700 billion out of Medicare. When in fact what the president did is get savings from people who were cheaters, the providers who were ripping off Medicare, and he put it back into Medicare and extended the life of the program by 8 years. These same people that ran ads against Democrats, maybe they did it to you, I don't know, all across the country. Democrats voted to cut Medicare. These same people who were crying these bitter tears are now suggesting destroying Medicare as we know it. I can't believe it. I really can't believe it. Who do you fight for? That's the basic question. Why are you here? Who do you fight for? Do you fight for the middle class? I believe we do on our side of the aisle. I believe President Obama does. And I believe if you look at the tax package that came over from Speaker Boehner and all of the cuts to Medicare, by the way, and Madam President, you were a leader in protecting children. There are cuts to child nutrition in there, major cuts. So you have to say, why do you have to cut food to poor kids? Why do you have to kick people out of Medicare? And their answer is, if they were honest, to protect the billionaires and the millionaires. Because that's what it's about. We know it. It's a fact in evidence. I gotta say, we owe more to the American people. We need to find a way back to the fiscal responsibility and the economic growth that we had when Bill Clinton was president. I served with 5 presidents already. It's amazing in my time in the Congress. And I've seen people come together at crisis moments when Social Security needed to be strengthened, when Medicare needed to be strengthened, when we had deficits as far as the eye can see and we had to resolve it. I've seen all that happen. And I will say, we've got 27 days left to see something good happen on this fiscal cliff. You know, when people tell you, oh, it's very complicated, don't believe it. Don't believe it. It's not complicated. There are several parts to this fiscal cliff. The biggest one is that the Bush-era tax cuts are expiring on 100% of the people. And if they expire, it means people will have to pay more in taxes at a time when we don't want them to have to struggle. We want them to have disposable income because it's good for their families and it's good for the economy, it's good for business, it's good for economic growth. The Bush-era tax cuts are expiring on December 31st. Why don't we find the common ground, get rid of that issue, get those tax cuts to the 98% of the middle class who need them, and fight about the millionaires and the billionaires later? They are okay. They are just fine. And if we were to do that, that simple step, and that means passing our bill that we passed on July 25th. We did it. It's done. We don't have to worry about it. We did our job over here. We got the votes. Pick it up and pass it over there. Now, I understand that Democratic leader Pelosi has done something very interesting. She has taken this bill, same exact bill, and put it at the desk at the House and started what they call a discharge petition. What that means is, since the Speaker Boehner won't bring this bill up, if 218 people sign the discharge petition, then there will be an immediate vote on the floor. So I want to urge Republicans and Democrats and independents over there to sign the discharge petition, to have a vote on this. We have a few days left till the end of the year, 27, and get this done. Then we can talk about the automatic spending cuts. There are ways to stop those. People are upset about those. Personally, I think we have to make spending cuts, but I think that we can soften the blow of those spending cuts by bringing home the money from the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan and bringing them home to this country, softening the blow of those cuts and making some more investments in infrastructure, which we desperately need after Hurricane, or we call it Superstorm Sandy, that hit New York, that hit New Jersey, that hit Connecticut, that hit Delaware, that hit Maryland. We now see that our infrastructure has to be what we call hardened, made stronger. We can do that if we invest in our people. So, Madam President, the President has offered a very clear plan that takes us off the fiscal cliff, that is fair. We have 27 days to do the right thing. The Senate already passed the tax cuts for 98% of the people. All we're asking is for the House to do that, match us. Then we can get back to the table and figure out a way to soften the blow of the automatic spending cuts. We can look at tax reform. And I want to just say this about tax reform. When our colleagues complain about tax rates and say, well, we would rather close loopholes, watch out. In order to raise the kind of funds we need to raise to lower this deficit, you're looking at the two biggest quote-unquote deductions. One is for your mortgage, and one is for charitable. And I would ask rhetorically, what billionaire do you know who has a mortgage? I don't frankly know any. They own their own homes. They don't need a mortgage. They're not hurt by that. Who gets hurt? The middle class. So let's do the right thing. We have passed the right thing on July 25th, 2012. We have 27 days left before taxes on the middle class go up. I know we have the wherewithal to do that. Thank you so much, Mr. President. I yield the floor.